Welcome to the Brett Snodgrass podcast. I am Brett Snodgrass, the host of this podcast, and I want you guys to go over to YouTube and subscribe to the Brett Snodgrass channel. We got many podcasts and creative videos coming out each and every week about family, faith, freedom. Do you guys want amazing families and faith and freedom? Check out our videos over in the Brett Snodgrass channel and subscribe to it. I got a very special guest on today's podcast, Mr. Danny Johnson. Danny Johnson's a real estate investor, blogger, host of the Flipping Junkie podcast, also the Braver podcast. He's CEO of Freedom Driven LLC, which is a company that helps real estate investors become successful through training, lead generation, software services. He's been in the industry since 2003, guys, 18 years. He knows his crapola about real estate investing. So let's check it out, my interview with Danny Johnson. So what's going on, Danny?
Oh, not much. How you doing, Brett?
Not too much, man. It's really excited to have you on the podcast again. This takes me way back because we had the Simple Wholesaling podcast, me and Jaron Barnes, back 3 or 4 years ago, and we interviewed you on the Simple Wholesaling podcast, and that's one of the episodes that I always remember because Danny Johnson with the Flipping Junkie, and we always had these crazy intros, and the intro for that was literally someone who needed more deals because they were so addicted to deals that they just needed the hit, and it was kind of like a drug dealer. So if we can play that, guys, we're going to find that episode and play that for you, but that just kind of takes me back, man. It's so great to have you on the Brett Snodgrass podcast today. Really excited for this episode. You've been through a journey, number one, been real estate investing since 2003. I mean, most of the time I get people on here maybe 3, 5, 6, 7 years, but hardly ever do I get, 18 years. And
yeah, now I feel old. You know what I think?
No, man, I'm right there with you. I'm like just a couple years shy of you, but man, super excited. But I always ask a deep question to kind of start off with, and that is, who is Danny Johnson?
Oh man, if you can find that out, let me know. It's who is Danny Johnson? Well, I mean, yeah, I've got all the different titles, right? The entrepreneur, the real estate investor, the software developer, the SaaS founder, for the software company, and podcast host, all that kind of thing. But I guess me as a person is, I don't know. I mean, that's a really interesting question. And who am I as a person? I'm kind of developing more of what that means, as I've been a little bit more on a spiritual path lately. So it's been interesting, with the whole question of who am I kind of thing, but not to get too deep. It's interesting. It's, and all those labels and all those things is regarding business is not who I am. It's what I do. And I don't know. Maybe I could talk about what I love to do as well.
Yeah.
But
we'll just talk about that because we talk a lot about purpose on this show. So sometimes it's a very hard question, right? So like you're not out of the box when you have a hard time answering that. A lot of people cannot answer that question when I ask, who really are you? And they start to go into, this is what I do. But Let's talk about that. Let's talk what you love to do. What makes you come alive when you're doing it? It doesn't feel like work at all. It's just like if you could do anything, if someone dropped millions of dollars in your bank account, and this is what you would do anyways because it's just who you are, what you love.
Yeah, it's the creating, right? The creative process, like having ideas and then being able to expand on those and see where they go. That's what I love doing. That's the thing, getting into the real estate business, the part of the marketing and the lead generation really was, the fun part for me, because it was like, how can I find, somebody in a situation that would be interested in selling a property quickly, that I could help out and find out and find them in a way that maybe other people aren't doing it. And, everybody can say everything's been done, but it's still a fun process. And what I enjoyed a lot about doing that, it wasn't just, let me go listen to what other people are doing and copy that, because you lose something in that. You don't find your own approach. And that's the fun thing for me. And so after years of doing real estate investing, I did get back into software development, which is what I did before I got into real estate investing, and creating software for real estate investors. And that was just an extension of finding a way to create new things. Right. And so that's really, I guess that's who I am, as somebody who loves creating things. And
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I mean, it really relates to me because I was meeting with kind of this coach last year, and same thing, same question. It was a hard question to answer. Who are you? What do you really love to do? What gets you out of bed? And it was all about, if I could just create, be creative, use that part of my brain to problem solve. And, when you get into real estate, there's a lot of problems to solve, right? It's just like you start to figure out these things, and then your engineering software kind of hat comes on. And that's what you really got into software too, which I know you have Lead Propeller, and now you have Forefront, which is a CRM for real estate investors. So let's just kind of dive into that. So you've been working with real estate investors for many years, and you have a huge need. Number one, how can we be more organized? How can we not lose our deals, and which in turn lose our leads? How can we, have them all in one place? Like, talk to about what you're doing now.
Yeah, and that was the problem, was making sure that leads didn't slip through the cracks, and and then freeing up time to do things by automating certain things. And so building out that system was always something I wanted to do and did do. And Forefront's basically like the ninth iteration of the evolution of all of that. And so years and years and years, even though we just launched the rebranding of that recently, it's really got all that history behind it. But I guess to make a really, because I could talk forever about it, but basically there was a time in my business where my ex-wife and I wore all the hats, and doing all the marketing, taking all the calls, going to the appointments, making the offers, lining up the contractor, checking on rehabs. I did all those things. And at the time, it was, we want to do more deals. So we've had success. We know how to do this. We're doing mostly rehabs, and then started doing some wholesaling. And it was like, we want to do more deals. We want to double the number of deals or something. So we just had to work harder. We had to generate more leads. And so the whole equation was more leads equals more deals.
Yeah.
Right. Number of leads times whatever the percentage of conversion rate. And then you've got your deals. And so we just need to generate more deals. And that was a very flawed way of thinking, in a very short-sighted way. And it was kind of like treating the business as a hobby. I was trying to keep it simple and trying to keep it fun. And, I don't have a business background, so I was really just, winging it to have fun and enjoy the whole thing. And so, but after a while, that got to be really old.
Because you're doing,
exhausting.
It's like,
right?
Because it's like you're already working really hard. You're wearing all these different hats, and now you're doing more leads to get more deals, which means you have to work even harder.
Right. Yeah. And I wrote a book called Flipping Houses Exposed, and that was from my blog post on Flipping Junkie from way back when. I did 34 weeks where I documented every single lead. And during those 34 weeks, there's 495 motivated seller leads. I think I turned 11 of those into deals. Which stinks, right? That's only 1 out of every 45. It took 45 leads to get a deal, basically.
Yeah.
And, and from maturing and growing as a business owner, and treating things as processes and systems, and hiring, people, we were able to get that to about 1 out of every 5, 1 out of every 7. So
wow,
it's just a crazy difference. And, you start looking at the parts of the business, like the lead, I was generating a good number of leads. So that was not the problem. Like, a lot of people feel like it's the lead gen that's a problem. Everybody wants to know what's the secret, what's the next thing, and everybody follows what gets put out there to be as something that's new or whatever. But it's really about the lead generation only has to get to a certain point. But you always have to measure what's happening in that, because you have to see what's happening once that lead comes in, because that's where the problem was all those years. And I was blind to it. And it was really like, when the lead came in, what's the whole situation? Am I answering those calls live? Am I missing them? And am I returning them fast enough? Am I setting an appointment quick enough? Are those appointments getting canceled? Am I following up enough if I don't get in touch with them, and don't give up on that? Where your competition might give up on trying to get a hold of them if they don't, because a lot of sellers will ghost. They just get cold feet or something.
Yeah.
And there's all those steps within the funnel from once you have that lead come in, those levers in the business that nobody's, are set on low for a lot of people, and they're just trying to dump more into this machine where all the levers are set on low and it's spitting everything out, and you're only getting a trickle at the end. Right. And so once you have, and so the software Forefront basically is set up in a way to be super simple to help you turn those levers up, right? So that you're turning more of those leads that come into that system into deals.
No, I love it. So you're really focused. It's not just about getting more leads and saying, hey, let's pump some more money into the marketing. Let's work on the process in the middle to saying, hey, let's keep the same amount of leads, but how can we convert more? Because you're 1 out of 45. Now you're 1 out of 5 to 7. It's a huge difference. Total game changer.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you can do that. So Forefront is a simple, basically CRM that really helps do that with the processes, which I'm a big, you talk about the creative mind. I mean, I'm always thinking about how can I do this smarter? How can I do this more efficient, easier, where I don't have to do all the work? I mean, that's the one thing I always put my business hat on whenever I'm doing anything at all. How can I do this? Because, I'm not that good at working through some of these things. So I'm always thinking about how can I delegate this or systematize it? And it sounds like that's what Forefront is.
Right. Yeah. It helps you set up it's basically a visual representation of your workflow. And, and then you can set up automations based on the different stages. And so it's a different approach, completely different, because we did, like I said, this was like the ninth iteration. Flip Pilot 1.0 was a couple iterations back, and we tried to build everything for everybody. We spent over a year. I spent over $1 million developing it. And then we launched it and found out that usability sucked. So it was, playing the whole CRM game that everybody's playing. It's whoever's got the laundry list, the biggest list of features, wins in that game. And after that, when we launched that and we had those, the issues of just usability, too many clicks, and the problems that, kind of like the problems that people with, Podio face, where they're just clicking around so much, it's very inefficient. Yeah. And so I made the tough call to scrap it and start from scratch. And
let's talk about that. I mean, I see a lot of entrepreneurs, especially when they're putting so much passion and effort into a project. So you spent $1 million into this, probably thinking at the time, this is going to be great. And then all of a sudden it had a lot of missing things in it, holes in it, wasn't user-friendly. And then you had to make that tough call. And a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't do that. They continue going and going until sometimes they end up broke. So what was that like, going through that process?
Well, and we were making money. So, I mean, it was like, it was a tough decision because, and there were circumstances with one of the developers that was key. But at the end of the day, we didn't see the forward path being possible through that, because we were going to have to change the interface a lot, which is a lot of work. And we didn't want code debt. We had that in the past. And so it's like, well, let's just make the tough call and just do that and start. And so the whole thing was to be able to start over and say, let's stop making all these assumptions, because that's what we were doing. Myself as an investor, as a customer myself, I thought I knew this is what everybody wants and needs. And, it was 1,001 assumptions that got put into this thing to have everything. And so we said, let's stop thinking that we know everything and that we know, and making all those assumptions, and try to make as few assumptions as possible and just do the route of the MVP, the minimum viable product. So put out an embarrassingly simple one and then iterate on it. And so every 2 weeks now with our customers, with the new product, we talk with them and they guide development of it. And that's what they absolutely love about it, because we're not spending a bunch of time in a vacuum developing this, releasing it, and then them going, what's all this? Why did you change this? Or, what is even going on with the roadmap? So they're a part of it. And it's really cool because we also don't waste energy developing something that people don't really care about.
Yeah.
So it's just putting the pieces in so we can keep it simple. And that's the balance. One of our core values is simple. It's to keep the tool simple, because that's the problem with the laundry list of features that everybody else is facing, is the system is not simple. And then the investor, the team, people are spending more time screwing around with the software than actually doing deals. And that's a problem. And so
Yeah.
that's what we've tackled with this.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I know there's a lot of real estate investors that listen to our podcast, and if they are interested and they're really frustrated right now because they can't, get a handle on their leads and organizing them in a great way and systematizing it, where do they go to find out about Forefront?
Sure. We have a demo. If you go to forefrontcrm.com/demo, so it's forefrontcrm.com/demo.
Cool. Check that out, guys. We're going to put that on our show description on the YouTube channel, on the Brett Snodgrass channel. Check it out, forefrontcrm.com. Correct, Danny?
Yep.
Awesome. Sounds good. Danny, I want to kind of transition a little bit. So you've been a real estate investor since 2003. You flipped wholesale nearly 1,000 homes. You have a software background. Again, you've created Forefront CRM for real estate investors. You've also created other CRM products, or not CRM, but you've created other lead Repeller, things like that. You have the Flipping Junkie blog podcast. Now you have a new podcast called Braver, which is really cool. I want to talk about that. But over the 18 years, man, what's like one of the biggest things that you have learned?
Biggest things that I've learned. The biggest things that I've learned is that I think the biggest thing is that the treating it like a hobby doesn't do anybody any favors. And I think going into it, that whole aspect of being afraid to hire people because it was going to be more responsibility. To treat it like a business was going to mean that I'm going to have to start dressing professionally and and do the things that I want to do. I wanted the freedom, and I had these false ideas, the false beliefs about what it meant to bring on help and to let go of the reins. And I think that really stunted our growth and really made things difficult for too long, because my ex and I it was 8 or 9 years, I think we ran the business by ourselves.
Wow.
And so, it's like, if we hire somebody, we got to keep enough deals coming in to be able to support them and their family. And so we won't be able to take a vacation for 2 or 3 months and not do any deals. But guess what? When we were doing everything, we couldn't do that anyway, because even a weekend, right? I'm leaving and I, get a call for a super motivated seller. I'm like, oh man, I'm going to miss this deal.
Yeah.
Because nobody is there to take care of it. So there's a big mindset shift that should happen for people. Some people enjoy having a smaller business, and just doing 10 deals a year or something. My father, he does more than 10 deals, but he still likes being very active in a lot of parts of the business.
Yeah.
But for me, I wanted the time to do other creative things. So
yeah. So when you say treat it like a hobby, what is that? Unpack that for us a little bit, because some people say, okay, a hobby, that's like playing golf or boating, something like that. But you say you treated it like a hobby. What does that even mean?
Well, that means doing what I feel like doing. Like doing things based on the knowledge I already have, right? Learning new things with regard to lead generation and things like that, but not wanting to sit down and get into the systems and processes, the things that aren't so much fun and, are time consuming. Getting into those things, it seemed like work. It just seemed like work. And so treating it like a hobby was avoiding those things and just doing the fun parts. But that leads to, gross inefficiencies and really turns things into a mess, and it's not sustainable, and it's not a very smart way to operate.
Yeah, yeah. So would you say that you were inconsistent because you would wake up and be like, this is what I feel like doing today. I don't feel like doing this other stuff, so I'm just not going to do it. It's always on the back burner. So maybe you're just inconsistent in certain areas. I mean, obviously you're really good at certain things, and these other things just kept getting pushed off. And I see that happen all the time with business owners.
Yeah. You get excited about something, you start doing it, and then you get sidetracked because you're juggling everything. And so it just it takes forcing yourself to carve out some time to do those things you don't want to do, to organize things. And then on the other side of that, how much freedom and time that gives you. It's like, why didn't I do this earlier? I read the book, Work the System, years and years ago, and E-Myth even before that, probably when we started in the business. so the knowledge was there,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
didn't do it.
Yeah, definitely. And you talk about freedom and time. I mean, so you're doing this by yourself, you and your ex, you're doing this for 8 to 9 years on your own. And you talked about you couldn't even take a weekend, couldn't even take a vacation. So I talk about freedom a lot on this podcast, and obviously you didn't have that. It really resonates with a lot of entrepreneurs, is because, if I ask someone, hey, why did you start your business? Most of the time it's, I started my business so that I could have freedom. I want freedom of money to make my own money that I want to make. I want freedom of time so I can make my own schedule. And except the problem is that years, 3, 5 years down the road, business owners complain because they don't have any freedom, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So talk to us about that. Like, what was, did you guys ever talk about that in the first 8 or 9 years? Was that even on your radar? Like, we want freedom. We just didn't know how to do it. And what is freedom?
Right. So how to do it? So there was if we grow big enough, and we were growing net worth, right? I mean, there was, you know, rental properties and notes being created, things for long term were being created, but the amount of work involved was a lot. And we did vacation, but we just didn't have a lot of the longer vacations or anything. And it was having to be on phones and handle closings at hotels and stuff like that along the way was really kind of annoying a lot of times. But so and what freedom is to me is just the ability to have the parts that you enjoy doing the only thing that you need to do. Mm. And so I think because I don't think freedom is not doing anything, right? That's not fun for anybody any long term. Like sitting on a beach, sipping pina coladas, day after day, after a couple weeks or months is going to be kind of miserable, I think, and especially for entrepreneurs, right? Which is going to drive us nuts.
Yeah.
And so it's just being able to set things up in a way to where you can focus on the things that you actually enjoy doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love what you said that, because I stepped out of our business about a year ago, and I kind of went through this funky stage, 2-3 months of really just funkiness of like, who am I a little bit? And I realized that people, they could have freedom of money and time, very comfortable. But if they're sitting on the beach drinking a pina colada, they are miserable because they don't have purpose. And I think that's why I asked that question at the very beginning, like, who is Danny Johnson? He talked about, my purpose, I believe, is to create. And I think the entrepreneurs, we have to have that. So I definitely agree. It's like, what is your purpose? Figuring that out. And then how can you just live in that and not have to do some of these other things that drain you? Because, you're probably like me, like there's certain things that sometimes at the end of the day, I'm really exhausted. And a lot of times it's because I had to do something that just drained all of my energy. But there's other times where, like, I look at my day and it was packed. Like, so last week, I think I did like 4 or 5 podcasts in one day. And wow. My wife asked me, she said, hey, aren't you just super exhausted? And I said, actually, no, I feel a lot of energy because that gives me energy. But if I was doing paperwork and tasks and documents or whatever, I would have been, exhausted after just an hour. It just drains all my energy. Would you relate to that? I mean, there's certain things.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I think
there were years and years of every single day feeling so frazzled. Right. And if you're at the end of the day, if you're needing to numb out immediately, and sit and veg in front of the TV and not want to discuss anything, or, you got to look at what's going on, because for a long time, that's what it was.
Yeah, definitely. So did you kind of have this aha moment in this? So obviously you did a lot of this stuff on your own. I mean, was there a period of time where, like, crap hit the fan? You're like, I can't do this anymore. Did you have a mentor telling you, Danny, you got to hire some things out and build some process out?
Yeah. As the software was growing, it became this two personality thing. It's like where my identity was in real estate investing and in software, and I was split. We had a team going, and I was still going into the meetings and managing a lot of that stuff. And though I wasn't spending a lot of time in the business, it still took up a lot of my, mental capacity or whatever I was doing. Mm-hmm. And at that time I met Justin Williams, from 7 Figure Flipping. And what all those other things. I've forgotten the names of all the stuff that he did, but we still talk. We're good friends. But he helped me to see it. I actually flew out to see him in San Clemente and see what his operation was like because I didn't believe him.
Yeah.
I really did not truly believe he was only working 4 hours or whatever a week. I thought that, and whenever he picked me up from the airport and he asked, like, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I don't know. Let's go check out some of your rehabs. And he goes, well, I don't even know where they're at. And if I did go there, the contractors wouldn't know who I was. And I was like, I started going, I don't think, I wonder if this guy's just trying to be a guru online,
Yeah.
right? Like, this seems fishy.
Yeah.
But then spending the day with him and meeting his people and everything, I was like, all right, he's got this figured out. And it took a while still for him to convince me to let go of acquisitions of going to appointments.
Yeah.
But it was helpful to see that it was possible. And through that relationship, I was able to.
Yeah. And after meeting Justin, probably you're like, if he can do it, I can do it. Kind of gave you that confidence, just starting to put the puzzle together. And that is a weird feeling. I remember I went to visit a gentleman named Dan Lane in Tennessee, and kind of the same way. He had removed himself out of the business, and he went and showed me his office, and he met a couple of his employees, and this was the first time he had ever met them. And I thought that was super weird. And I said, you don't know, you've never met this person, they work for you, but you've never met him? And he's like, no, this is the first time I ever met him. And I thought that was super weird. But anyways, the same thing happened to me a few months ago. We had a company picnic, and I went and I met a couple of our employees. That was the first time I've ever met them, and I realized, oh my gosh, this is real, and it can definitely happen. But I remember that because he gave me maybe the confidence for me to be able to do that. So same thing with you. Justin gave you, and then. So take us through that. So you started hiring out, systematizing things a little bit more, and let's just take us through the journey when you started to get some of that freedom.
Yeah, having people come on and the first hire was my brother-in-law at the time, coming in and doing acquisitions, and he did okay and learned that there was the mental transition, the mindset shift that has to happen for people to believe that people are willing to take, lower offers willingly, knowing they're getting less than they could if they did other things, to sell their house. And so that was that learning experience. And then we brought another person on after that, and he really started taking off and doing well. And eventually, even though it was a small company, became sort of the COO, which really made things easier, because then he was managing operations, and it was really just kind of guiding him and being in those meetings every week just to see the numbers to make sure things were trending in the right way, and then giving feedback based on all the experience that we've had over the years. And obviously some mistakes were made, but that's a given. But honestly, I think less mistakes were made because people specialized in their positions. And when I was trying to do everything, I was making mistakes left and right. I remember this distinct time where I went to check on a house that wasn't selling, right? We rehabbed it was on the market, and it wasn't selling. And I went by and I was appalled. I was absolutely appalled. I went to the master bedroom and the master bath, and the vanity was rotted out. And I'm just like, how did I miss this?
Yeah.
And this is ridiculous. The whole place looks like a wreck. It's like I must have just been, I was going and checking stuff off my to-do list, but not really even doing the work, right? It was like, I got to check on these rehabs. So I'd drive by, I'd talk to the contractor. Okay, I did my part. I didn't really look at anything, so that kind of stuff happened. So
yeah.
it was cool to see how much better things operate when you have people that focus on operating those roles.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think we're very forgiving with ourselves. It's just like, we just brush our mistakes sometimes under the rug. But if somebody else did that same thing with your company, you're like, what are you doing? Right? Definitely. I do that all the time. So let's just kind of talk about this, is that many entrepreneurs are very, very stressed out to the max. I know I had been stressed out in my life, just to the max, where I had to go see a doctor a couple of times, things like that. So, and you've learned to have compassion on yourself, and no matter what, everything will be okay. So in my experience, I take my business very, very seriously, which I'm sure you did too. People take their business very, very seriously, but sometimes it stresses them out so much that they're so worried and have so much anxiety that things are going to crumble if they let go of the reins, if they're not in every little thing. Talk to us about like what you've learned through all this.
Yeah, that's it's a really good question about what I learned through all of it, because it's an interesting transition to let go of trying to control everything and have everything need to be the way you think that it should be. And I didn't do that willingly. I didn't make that transition willingly. It kind of was thrust upon me because, several years ago, started having marriage trouble, like serious stuff. And at the same time, was the crumbling of that first iteration of Flip Pilot, where it was everything and the usability stunk. And I had an issue with one of the developers where I was between a rock and a hard place with him. Nobody liked him. I didn't even like him. And he was the only person that knew all of this back end, work. And, I was just like, what am I going to do? Like, I'm in a really bad spot, and I'm having trouble concentrating even because of all the stuff that's going on, in my personal life. And so like there were days where I would just sit in my office and not do anything because I couldn't do anything. And it's interesting because I was just like, it's almost like post-traumatic stress syndrome stuff. I mean, it's like a trauma, like it really, but it was one of those things because it was an interesting thing because the way I began to see that after the fact was, sort of God's way of saying, I'm going to take over here, because I couldn't, and I just, and all of a sudden people stepped up, different people stepped up, and now people within my team, they're actually the ones that came to me and suggested, hey, I know you don't want to hear this, but, we should scrap this. And, and they were willing to work extra hours and all that, knowing that I just spent all that money and, and help out and do all that stuff. And just things started to happen. And I got to experience what it was like to not have to put every step of what needs to happen to make something happen, and then be the one to make sure that happens.
Yeah.
To realize that things would just work out.
Yeah.
And even if they didn't work out, maybe it wasn't supposed to work out, right? Like that trust and that faith that, I mean, I listened to a lot of Michael Singer's, stuff and read a lot of his books. He doesn't have a lot of books, but I've read them. But he talks about like, the universe, like look at the order here, like look at how everything's worked out. It's done a pretty darn good job of itself on its own without your input. So what makes you think that things won't be okay or what's supposed to happen without you controlling everything?
Right. Yeah.
And it's just like, and it's hard. It really sometimes is hard to do that. But I've been working, especially Michael Singer's surrender experiment, because I've been attempting to do that, right? Like I've got several opportunities right now, big opportunities. And instead of like weighing pros and cons and racking my brain about what's the right choice, I'm not making a choice. And I'm being open to one of them, or to, whatever happens, guiding me naturally into the right direction.
Yeah. And I love, you said that was Michael Singer.
Right.
And he talked about the surrender experiment. And I love that word kind of experiment, because I think that's what I went through when I kind of stepped out of the business over a year ago. And I just started to ask myself, this is just going to be an experiment. I can do this for 6 months, a year, and just see how things go, and I can always, if it fails miserably, I can always step back in and run a small business, boutique, whatever I want to do. But I love that experiment. Some people never do that. They never risk that because they have to have control over everything. So I would just tell all the audience out there, is like, I started to ask myself, if I don't do this, then what's my life going to look like? Am I going to really do the things I really want to do? And if I do, then what's the worst that can happen? So I love that. And you also talked about a couple big things, which I believe, especially as men, one of our biggest fears is of failure. And and it has so many different things coming at us. We fail to ourselves. We have our family looking at us, and we might look like a failure to them. We have other people. We don't want to look like a failure to them. And you had some big things happen in your life, right? You had this big software that had failed probably in your mind at that time. The marriage was failing. So talk to us about that and what you learned, because obviously I think that's where your podcast comes out, where talk about this fears of, all these different things.
Yeah. So to talk about all, there's a lot of big things there, but I mean, it was like the perfect storm. It was just like whoa, like, I mean, why am I having to experience, like things have been going so well for so long. Why am I having to experience all these things at once and trying to make sense of it? And I spent a lot of time really searching and seeking. And, I've got a good friend, Linda, that had told me, it's like, you're trying to find answers, and all this striving could be the problem,
Mm-hmm.
right? Striving to find the answer. And that gets back into the surrender part of it. But the fear, I mean, everybody's got fear, right? And that was the whole purpose of, eventually getting to where I had the Braver podcast created, was because Jordan Peterson. I think I had listened to something that he had done about the clinical studies regarding fear and how fear doesn't really go away. And it's like your choice on how you want to approach it, right? Either you can be afraid of it and not look at it, right, and just like know it's there, and basically you end up kind of like closing in,
Mm-hmm.
very narrow focused on what you're trying to achieve, and you like block everything else out, and you're just like trying to stay safe, and you're just like shrinking and shrinking, playing very small. And that's one way, right? Because you're going to do one or the other, right? It's there, right? Whatever it is that maybe you're not even aware of sometimes, that there's that fear there and you're operating because of it. But the other approach, he said, was voluntarily looking at it, right? And it's not that the fear goes away, it's that we become braver. And so if you voluntarily dig into how you're operating, like how are you operating throughout the day? What are you avoiding? And why, if you're doing things out of habit, or, bad habit, good habit, whatever, could that be a sign that you're avoiding something, or something that's there that's really, something that you should look into? And a lot of times the painful inner problems are the ones we least want to go to, but it's like the obstacle is the way kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. That's the wound that we have that we should look at and address, because it's screaming out for us to do it. And so when you, like Jordan Peterson was talking about, if you voluntarily look at it, right, and choose to become braver and look at it and address it and work towards some kind of resolution in it, and really a lot of times it's just about acceptance. It's not even something that needs to be fixed, for heaven's sake. A lot of times it's just accepting reality. It's accepting some things about ourselves. And he said, when we voluntarily do that and choose to become braver, it's like a call to action, and it's this adventure. It's a call to adventure, to do that. And so I love that, and I wanted to create a podcast around that. But that's basically, when everything kind of hit the fan, several years ago, with all this stuff happening at once. I'd like to say that I chose to become braver, but I didn't. I kind of surrendered, and it led me to that. But now, like, seeing those things and just, I'm okay with whatever happens. And, people listening might think, well, it's okay because you're financially free, and like, no matter what, you've got this cushion.
Yeah.
It's like, sometimes like things, with the software company, at times we've had major bleeds month after month after month. And, it's not easy, but, just, relaxing into, because when we narrow in and we cower in a way and we narrow in, we're not open to all the possibilities of everything and the ways that our lives can change, right? We're just so narrowly focused. And I think that was one of the first books, I think, when I was going through the troubles personally. There was a book by Deepak Chopra. I think that's how you pronounce his name. But it was like the 7 spiritual laws of business or something like that. And that's the only reason why I was willing to read it, was because it was like, business related. Yeah. So, but he talks exactly about that, I think. And it's like this whole, when we try to figure something out and we have like our own beliefs and our own like narrow knowledge of a situation, we really close ourselves off to the bigger, opportunities that are within a lot of that stuff. And so I
Yeah.
don't know if that's really high level and general enough to understand, but
No, no, no. Thank you so much for sharing. And as we're kind of winding down the show here, I just kind of want to get back. So, and I know this is a really, really sore, could be a really sore subject, deep subject, but your marriage, obviously. And I was at a mastermind one time, and a guy was very, very successful, had a lot of money, and he had gotten divorced. And his comment was, there's no public success that can ever replace your private failure. So I want to just kind of hit home, because a lot of people, marriage is really, really hard. Number one, I've been married 9 years, and it's just a hard thing. And did you do something to really help you through that? So we won't talk about, the downturn of it, but after it was over, what happened? Like, did you get someone to help you through it? What was something that really you could grab onto to help you through this tough situation?
yeah, it was community and joining, a men's group and getting to where I could talk through. So it was like moving away from isolation, because that was, at first, that was like the thing. It was like I was kind of like ashamed, right? And it's this whole thing of like, oh my, to me, that was the most difficult thing, because I mean, I've always felt that family was most important. So for that, my biggest thing was my kids. Like my kids won't have both of their parents all the time with them, and I couldn't allow it. Like I could not allow that. And then I had to, and that was really, really hard. Still hard to this day. But having, not isolating and being ashamed, being willing to share, especially for men and for entrepreneurs, like to share how we feel is not natural. And if you're not, if you weren't raised with, good role models in that respect, it's super difficult. And I'm still learning how to do it. But around, men that, I feel are safe, that we can do those things. And in the group I'm in, the first time I went to one of the meetings, this guy, we do different processes, and these guys were facing each other, and one of them ended up yelling at this other guy right in his face, and just and the whole idea is understanding that it's not about this other guy, he's just holding space for him.
Mm.
And it was like, wow, this is really cool, because this is stuff you can't do anywhere else. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like it's really helping people to let all that stuff that's in there, because we've hold it in, especially men these days. We can't be angry, we can't be violent, we can't, and in safe ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not in ways that are going to harm anybody, but
Yeah.
a lot of those things. And so I think that probably helped the most. And then just having a deeper relationship with God, and that's ever evolving for me, that how that's being approached. And meditation, I started doing meditation twice a day, every day, and that's been a game changer for me too, just calming the mind, and really, it's been a game changer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hear that all the time, especially for men. Isolation. It's like that's where the enemy can come in, and that's where we need community. That's why I'm part of men's groups, church groups, mastermind groups. And so if you're anybody out there, like if you feel isolated, you have to have community, whether you're, successful, not successful, going through anything. It's so important to have community in your life. Danny, any other tips before we go to the last section of this show? Thank you so much for just kind of opening up about this. I know it's a tough subject sometimes, but I really, really appreciate that. But let's just wrap it up. And any other tips for our listeners?
Yeah, I think the tip is, if you've got a passion for this business, and it's more than just a desire to get rich quick, and being honest with yourself about that, and being real passionate about, setting up passive income and things like that, and just being really pumped and interested about it, be sure to find your way in it, and not just stick to some prescribed way and feel like that's the way it has to be. Like let the creative side of it come through. Make mistakes, right? That's the thing. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and try to find someone that's going to hold your hand through everything, because it's the mistakes are how you really learn and grow and make your way in the business. So.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. Yes. Make mistakes, fail forward often. So thank you so much, Danny. And guys, check out forefrontcrm.com as well. We're going to put it in our description. Danny, I end every show with a little fire round. So got 4 questions for you. So fire round number 1, best book recently read.
It's recently reread. It was Straight Line Leadership. And a lot of people haven't heard of that book. I think it's a really brilliant book.
Yeah, I'm going to get that one. I haven't read that one. It's awesome. Sounds good. All right, person you would love to have coffee with.
Person I would love to have coffee with. Who would I love to have coffee with? Dead or alive?
Yeah.
Steve Jobs, I guess.
Cool. All right, favorite podcast.
Favorite podcast? Yours, of course.
Oh, thanks.
No, it's a good one. But I really enjoy Brian Buffini's podcast. I haven't listened to it in a long time because I haven't listened to a lot of podcasts recently, but I really enjoy his podcast, Brian Buffini.
Cool. All right, last one. If I were to give you $1,000, what would you do with it?
I'd give it to charity.
Wow. You're a good man, Danny. Good man. Sounds good. All right, this is a wrap. That's a wrap of the fire round, and this is a wrap with Danny Johnson, guys. Go check out forefrontcrm.com. Danny, thank you for being on the Brett Snodgrass podcast. Appreciate you, man. Wish you the best.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you so much for checking out the Brett Snodgrass channel. If you like this video, please slam on that like button. And if you really like it, then subscribe to our channel here. And remember to leave us a comment below, and I'm going to try my hardest to reply to all the comments. Thank you guys so much. This is why I do what I do. Every single week, I come out with content that focuses on success, freedom, and living out your purpose. Thank you guys so much. See you next time.